He's on. Chairman, he's on. The Honourable Minister is on. Good afternoon, Honourable Minister.
Is on, but it's still muted.
We have just 2 more minutes before we go live. And yes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Honourable Minister.
Good afternoon, sir.
I really appreciate. I appreciate that you've dropped every other thing to join us here, and I cannot say more than that. Thank you so very much.
You're welcome, sir.
Good afternoon, Honourable Minister.
Good afternoon, Ambrose.
Right. Thank you.
Have you met Khalid? Have you met the minister?
First time, Your Honourable Minister. It's a great pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Appreciated.
If he's going to be back in Abuja next week, because I know he's going away, then maybe I can work out something towards the end of the week, upper week.
That'll be nice.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Over to you.
Thank you very much. Once again, good afternoon. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Folashade Ambrose Medeben, Communication, Public Affairs, and Sustainable Development Director. Thank you all for joining the second session of our Concrete Ideas webinar series with the theme, Addressing the Root Cause of Building Collapse in Nigeria. Today's webinar is being recorded. We will be able to share a link with you after the event. We welcome you to revisit the content yourselves and share it with your colleagues thereafter. We also invite your comments and questions. Please refer to the Q&A chat box at the bottom hand of your screen. If you think of any questions for the speakers at any point, please just articulate it accordingly. I hereby hand over to our esteemed chairman of Lafarge Africa PLC, Mr. Adebode Adefioye, to give us his opening remarks and welcome.
Thank you, Folashade. Our special guest of honor, the Honourable Minister of Mine and Steel Development, Architect Olamilekan Adegbite. Our distinguished thought leaders here present, Engineer Joseph Makoju, Chairman, Cement Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, and I think appropriately so, Malam Farouk Salim, Director General, Standards Organization of Nigeria, Dr. Mrs. Bola Onigbogi, President, Nigerian Council of Registered Insurance Brokers, Engineer Ali Masuya Rabiu, President, Council for the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria, Dr. Kehinde Babajide Oshifala, the President of Nigerian Institution of Structural Engineers, the Head of Sustainable Construction at Lafarge Holcim, Mr. Michael Sharv, the CEO Lafarge PLC, Mr. Khalid El Dukani, my colleagues on the board of Lafarge Africa PLC here present, management and staff of Lafarge Africa PLC, valued stakeholders and partners from the private and public sector, gentlemen of the press, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'm most delighted to welcome our special guest of honor, the Honourable Minister of Mines and Steel Development, Architect Olamilekan Adegbite. I also welcome our thought leaders and participants to this second edition of our webinar series. The theme of this edition is addressing the root cause of building collapse in Nigeria. It is heartwarming to note that Concrete Ideas webinar series is gradually entrenching itself as a formidable platform for strategic discussion of critical and topical issues pertinent to the construction and building solution industry. The inaugural session had the theme, Public-Private Partnership Approaches to Rapidly Upscaling Nigeria's Economic Infrastructure. That session was chaired by the Honourable Minister of Works and Housing, Mr. Babatunde Raji Fashola. The thought leaders deliberated on Nigerian infrastructure gap, poverty reduction, foreign investments in infrastructure and economic growth, public-private partnership projects around the world and in Nigeria. Additionally, delegate preferred solutions for Nigerian road development and public-private partnerships and the growth of construction sector in Nigeria. During that session, a number of initiatives came to the fore. I'm confident that some of those recommendations have begun to have impact positively on the policies of government to drive infrastructure growth. For instance, the Honourable Minister during the session, the Honourable Minister of Works, Babatunde Raji Fashola, during the session, advocated that a significant amount of government revenue should be invested in infrastructure with a view to accelerating productivity and growth. Very recently, the federal government announced the establishment of an infrastructure company with an initial seed capital of ₦1 trillion called Infraco, set up in partnership with the private sector. According to Bloomberg, the fund is expected to grow its capital and assets to ₦15 trillion over time to fund public projects like road, rail, and power. The Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Mr. Yemi Oshibajo, will head a committee charged with getting the company started, while the Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, will chair the company that was named Infraco. This shows that government is listening. Indeed, we need to continue to bring topical issues to the fore. Today's session will not be any different, as we have a formidable group of distinguished thought leaders in diverse fields here to address the root cause of building collapse in Nigeria and provide possible solutions. Our commitment to sustainability is the key driver of this initiative. How we come together as stakeholders to review the challenges within the sector and provide solutions towards eliminating the problem. At Lafarge, we continue to develop programs targeted at improving health and safety in construction. For instance, we have trained over 5,000 artisans to impact building skills and ensure adherence to health and safety standards and procedures. Health and safety in construction training. These include bricklayers, block makers, on-site workers at construction sites. We equally developed the construction site health and safety guide on global best practices in construction. I believe more can still be done across various segments of the construction industry. Once again, I'm grateful to the Honourable Minister, all the thought leaders, all the participants, as well as everyone that has helped in one way or another to put this event together. Your commitment is recognized and appreciated. At this point, let me invite the Honourable Minister of Mines and Steel Development, Architect Olamilekan Adegbite, to give his keynote address.
Thank you so much. I think I'll follow on your protocol that you've laid so extensive. So permit me to adopt the protocol that's been established by the chairman of the company so we could save time. It is my pleasure to be a guest speaker at this webinar, which has a theme, addressing the root cause of building collapse in Nigeria. This is topical for a number of reasons. Nigeria, as a developing country, needs to increase its spending on infrastructure, particularly the construction of housing units for its growing population. Last year, the year 2020, the National Economic Council approved the construction of 300,000 mass housing units in all the states of the Federation and the Federal Capital Territory. The project, with an average of 10,000 homes per state, is expected to provide at least 1.5 million homes for Nigerian families. The industry as a whole should ensure that the global best practices are adhered to in the construction of these housing units to forestall the tragedy of building collapse. The unacceptable frequency of building collapse has sadly led to the loss of lives and properties in Nigeria. Studies reveal that in recent times, the collapse of building has become prevalent, and if deliberate measures are not adopted to curb this menace, it will have more devastating effects on the society. The root cause of building collapse in Nigeria remains essentially negligence. And this manifests in several forms: using substandard building materials, illegal alteration or conversion of existing buildings into other usage, inadequate primary site investigation, poor concrete mix ratio, and I think Lafarge is coming to rescue in that. You now have pre-mixed concrete. Kudos to Lafarge on that. Inadequate structural analysis, lack of adherence to material specification, no adherence to building code and design, and lastly, inadequate supervision by professionals, among others. The desire to cut cost at the expense of quality. This happens mostly with low budget projects, where the client desires to cut costs, by subverting quality. This breeds disaster, because ultimately the cost of collapse is greater than the cost that you were trying to save. There are measures that we can take to avert occurrences of building collapse. And these are rigorously adhering to standards and refusing to cut corners despite the temptation to save costs. Accurate structural evaluation, which starts from the land itself, engagement of competent professionals, use of standard building materials, and routine structural maintenance and integrity tests. This is particularly relevant to old buildings like in Lagos Island. Executing proper preliminary site investigations, amongst others. These are some of the measures that can be taken, of course, to counter the effects of building collapse. Also, I want to talk about, because the chairman mentioned the training of artisans for the building industry. The problem, which of course we're trying at the federal level to work against, the procurement system in Nigeria precludes most of this level of workers from gaining access to projects. And what happened thereby? They are only engaged in those low-end private projects where disaster occurs. The people that you have trained do not have access to the right projects where they can own their skills and get better. You train people, they can't find work, then it amounts to nothing. So as part of the solution, we advocated at this level, when I say we, that's a critical body of people, that the government should amend the procurement law to include this class of people for certain projects. Because right now, even from the smallest project, you can't employ this class of people to do them, because you need to bring so many materials. Don't let me bother you with all this, the long list that you need to provide, which of course, this class of people cannot provide. So when we train them and we cannot engage them, it leads to frustration. And you find out that they are only engaged in all these small budget projects. In conclusion, we need to, building collapse poses a great danger to our society in terms of loss of lives and property. And I'm sure this webinar will shed more light than I've been able to on other useful suggestions and ideas to curb this menace in Nigeria. Thank you for listening. And of course, I look forward to learning more from the array of professionals on this webinar. Thank you so much.
Fola?
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. Thank you for your very important speech. We appreciate that. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to the next opening remark. Khalid?
Thank you so much, Paul, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and please permit me to stand on the existing protocols. I'm very pleased to welcome you all to the second edition of our quarterly Concrete Ideas webinar series with the theme of addressing the root cause of building collapse in Nigeria. I would like to express my sincere appreciation to His Honourable Minister of Mines and Steel Development, Architect Olamilekan Adegbite, for honouring our invitation to attend today's webinar as our special guest of honour. Also to our esteemed thought leaders, thank you for taking the time to join this event. Our focus today is on how the public and the private sector can work collectively to address the root cause of building collapse in Nigeria. We are here to review the challenges and causes and then further proffer sustainable solution to eliminating the issue of building collapse in the country. It's an all-inclusive affair targeted at nation building and building for the future generation. As you are aware, Lafarge Africa is a member of Lafarge Holcim Group, the world leader in building solutions. As a group, we are reinventing how the world builds by shaping a world that is greener, smarter, and that works for all. Our commitment to sustainability, which at the core of our operation and strategy resonates, and as a leading building solution company, we believe in building a world that works for people and the planet. It's on the premise that we have called for this discourse. We are advocating for a world that keeps people safe, connected, and thriving. We look forward to the deliberations, valuable participation, and insightful high-profile recommendations that will be brought to the session today. With this, let me invite our moderator, Dr. Ugo Okiti, Managing Director, Business Day, to take over the proceedings. Dr. Ugo.
Thank you so very much, Khaled, and thank you for inviting me to be the moderator of this very important conversation this afternoon. So, for the benefit of those that are probably attending Concrete Ideas for the first time, let me welcome you on behalf of Lafarge to this important discussion, wherever it is that you are joining us from. Concrete Ideas is a quarterly platform for strategic discussions and conversation that borders on construction and, of course, its entire value chain. It is the thought leadership intervention by Lafarge, and it aims to promote sustainable change, seek improvements in the industry, and of course, a platform for commercial success also in the industry. As the chairman and the MD said, this is the second of its kind. The first one was held on October 13, 2020, focusing on PPP approaches to rapidly upscaling Nigeria's economic infrastructure. Today, our focus is different. We'll be looking at the root causes of building collapse in Nigeria. How do we address it? That is the focus of our conversation this afternoon. But let me just quickly say that as we look forward to a post-COVID-19 pandemic, there's no doubt that the expectation is that the construction industry will be one of the industries that we will expect to drive growth and job creation. And this can be more timely, given that in the last 24 hours, the National Bureau of Statistics says that the unemployment rate in Nigeria today is about 33%. So with that expectation, not only are we going to be looking at the industry to drive growth and job creation, but to also eliminate building collapse in Nigeria, which in the last decade increased by 77%, according to Queries and Dojo in their article. So in this context, let me just quickly say the two things that Lafarge is doing, and we'll move very quickly to our conversation. The first thing Lafarge is doing, as the chairman also said, is they have trained about 5,000 artisans in how to improve standards and, of course, procedures. And of course, he also has his ready-mix business, which offers value-added products designed to be environmentally sustainable. So today, we are going to take the conversation forward. What more can be done to avoid building collapse in Nigeria? What are the right blend of incentives and monitoring that is required? And of course, how do companies in the private sector working with the government deliver our expectation of total elimination of building collapse? So let me now very quickly introduce our panel, and we have the Honourable Minister that has been introduced already. We also have Engineer Joseph Makoju, who is the Chairman of the Cement Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. You are welcome to the conversation, sir. We also have Malam Farouk Salim, who is the Director General, Chief Executive Officer of the Standard Organization of Nigeria. You are also welcome, sir. We also have Dr. Mrs. Bola Onigbogi, who is currently the 20th President of the Nigerian Council of Registered Insurance Brokers and the second female President of the Council. You are welcome, ma. It's not easy to be right up there in this male-dominated industry. I respect you, madam. And we also have Engineer Ali Masuya Rabiu, who is the President of the Council for the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria. That is CORE. He is being represented by Engineer Dominic Akubo, who is joining us from Abuja, I believe. You are welcome, sir. Thank you for joining us here this afternoon. I also have Dr. Kende Babajide Osifala, who is the President of the Nigerian Institution of Structural Engineers, and he was also the Deputy Rector, Academics, and Director of Physical Planning Unit of Yaba College of Technology prior to his retirement just early this year. I hope you are enjoying your retirement, and sorry for calling you out of that to speak to us about your experience, but you are welcome to this conversation, sir. And I also, finally, but definitely not the least, I have Michael Schaaf, who is the head of sustainable construction at Lafarge Holcim. That's the global business materials and solution company, obviously, serving masons, builders, architects, and engineers all over the world. Michael, wherever it is you're joining us from, you're welcome, and greetings from Lagos in Nigeria. Honorable Minister, thank you once again, and we are delighted to have you here this afternoon. So if I may just quickly come to you with the first question that I have here. You already said some very, very important things about the work that you're doing, about the aspirations that you have for the nation. Can we just, would you please just tell us more? What are the initiatives, whether before you became minister or since you became minister, that we can learn from in this expectation, in our drive to eliminate building collapse in Nigeria? And this is very, very important, given that, given your background as an architect, and of course, in the office of the minister. Now, I'm sure you can share either from your experience or the initiatives that you are currently pushing in order for us to have zero building collapse in Nigeria. Honorable Minister, sir.
Thank you so much once again. I say good afternoon to everybody. Some of the, I'll talk from my experience, my background. Before I went into public office, I used to be an architect and a builder. And one of the things, initiatives that was laudable, started by Lagos State government, was actually having scouts because you found out that most of this collapse building, incidents of collapse building happens when there are no strict supervision. When there are strict supervision and monitoring, you can nip this in the bud. So Lagos State at one time, maybe like 10, 15 years ago now, started this where you have, I call them scouts. You have these people who monitor on foot, you know, maybe a group, they take them somewhere and they comb the nooks and crannies of Lagos. This started maybe in the metropolis, but I think it's been expanded to other areas. This way, in the past, I must say this, in the 80s and early 90s, you could do a project without approval, you know, for 6 months, 1 year, nobody will see you. Once you're in a nice corner and then you finish them, government is unaware of it. But with this initiative, they comb the nook and cranny of the state and they find projects that are going on under construction. And of course, such projects are tagged. They are tagged asking for proper permits. You know, have you got your approval? Are you being monitored? And they also introduce this scheme. Before you cast major structural elements like slabs, you must invite the system, that's the Lagos State people, to come and inspect. They look at your structural arrangements, they look at your reinforcement arrangement, and also they check your concrete on the day of pouring. These are some initiatives that Lagos State government started, and I hope they're still doing it, and this is something we can learn from. Because if this is properly done and monitored, it will limit the incidence of collapse from lack of supervision and using defective materials. These two things I learned there. But then further, since I've been in office, especially in mining, because safety in mining is also very important. There are incidents of collapse of the mines on people and then loss of lives. I've realized that we need to do more training and retraining for our people. And I'm glad that Lafarge is involved in that, where they're training artisans. Like I said in my speech, the next level is to be able to engage this, because when you train people and they could not find justification for that training, by being engaged, it becomes a frustration. And of course, they move away. So we need to engage them. And that's why I said we need to lower the standards for procurement to get into the procurement system, especially of the federal government, because the paper requirement is beyond what this level of people can provide. So these are some of the things that we can do, engage them, they own their skills, they practice what they have learned, and they get better at it if we do this. These are some of my thoughts on this, and I'm also open to learn from other people. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so very much, Honorable Minister. And just staying in government on the part of regulation, I want to move to Malam Farouk Salim, who is the Director General of the Standard Organization of Nigeria. Malam, SON has become increasingly reputable. I mean, definitely anyone that has been following the organization can only recognize the great work that is being done in the organization. So we thank you for that. But despite this effort, sometimes with poor quality materials still find their way to the site, either because the owners are not aware of what is a quality material, or there's just someone somewhere trying to cheat someone. How do we, going forward, how do we ensure that it is only quality materials approved by by SON get to all these sites, so that we can in the future minimize or totally eliminate building collapse in Nigeria?
Thank you very much, sir, for the kind comments about the progress we are making in the country. And being a neophyte in the system, I'm learning fast and learning well about the issues and how to address them. But the straight and simpler answer to the question you asked, it has to do more with supervision, like the Honourable Minister pointed out, because buildings essentially are local, and the local government, the state governments are primarily responsible for supervising building facilities. So essentially, in this system that we are, the consequences are very limited. It's a high gain business where people peddling these substandard products have more gain than consequences. And I mean, in the last couple of years, even though I just came back to the country, but I've been here on a regular basis, I have not seen an engineer or a builder or an individual who was punished for breaking the rules. People build, when I was much younger, I had stories of people trying to build a two-story building on a one-story building, and the local authorities will stop that person because they don't have enough foundation. They don't have enough support. But nowadays, people can decide to make a 10-story building essentially for an old 4-story building without consequences. Now, what we do as an organization, and we're doing a very decent job of it, is to do occasional weekly market surveys of building materials, to do regular enforcement in the areas we're allowed to go, because I'm sure you are aware that for the last 10 years, we've been kept away from the ports. And essentially, most of these products that come into the country that are substandard comes through the ports. 85% of them come through Lagos. And our people essentially are forced to rely on customs largesse to allow us into the ports when they have suspecting items, or we rely on certain intelligence, which is not very reliable all the time. And you have these young employees of ours chasing containers on the streets, trying to enforce essentially something we could have been doing in the ports. Now, in addition to that, like I said, even situations like 3 to 4 weeks ago, we shut down most steel companies in the country because of our survey showed most of them are guilty of allowing substandard stuff into the market. And they were penalized, and we are monitoring them closely. So the Center organization, us an organization, we are doing our utmost possible best using the resources we have available to us to make sure products that are building materials are up to standard. Now, the good thing is most of our local manufacturers, Lafarge included, their products are excellent. They don't have any issues. Our cable in this country is so well respected that because of the enforcement we do with them, with the collaboration with the cable industry, that actually people are now faking Nigerian cable. I mean, they'll go overseas, they'll make a cable, and then they make it made in Nigeria. So we are making progress, and then the progress is begetting individuals that are trying to fake those products. But I'm a very positive individual. I'm just worried with the new African free trade coming into the country. If we are not allowed to do our jobs properly by going in the ports, and the government is not bringing in scanners into the ports to make sure that individuals can check these items coming in, we really have a big problem coming ahead. Thank you.
DJ, I want to follow up with one question in two. You mentioned two very, very important things. The first one is that people that were responsible for some of these collapses, that there was no consequences. Where is the gap in that? Is it in the law, or is just in some kind of policy? Or why are there no consequences for what I call bad behavior? That's number one question. Then number two question is the one on your presence at the port. If it is very, very important, why do you think the government is not reinstating the agency at the port?
Well, the issue of consequences essentially, unfortunately, doesn't apply to building industry alone. It applies to almost everything, unfortunately, in this country, because the government is spread thin. You know, if they may not necessarily, because ideal situation is the inspectorate in the ministries of the state ministries should be the ones not only inspecting, like the minister says, every stage of the building process. They should be the ones prosecuting individuals who break those issues. I mean, we have hundreds of people die at one point, and we don't hear anybody going to court and getting convicted over it. So that's something that it has to be a national issue, but it's more local. It depends, like Lagos, I'm pretty sure those people who broke the rules in Lagos essentially are getting it worse than maybe some who break the rules in other side of the country. Now, the issue of the ports you're mentioning, we are working, I'm working seriously. Since I started work 4 months ago, I've made presentations to authorities, because the original issue why we are kicked out 10 years ago was based on ease of doing business, which rightfully at that time, individuals bringing products into the country are delayed because there are too many agencies in the ports, too many issues. But after 10 years, the authorities were supposed to have scanners in the ports, but they haven't. As far as SON is concerned, even 10 years ago, we were illegally kicked out because by law, the SON Act of 2015, Section 30, subsection B, says we have to clearly be at the port. But I'm working right now with the authorities. I'm trying to explain my situation to the proper authorities, and I'm pretty confident very soon we should be able to get a positive response one way or the other. We are not averse to reassessing our situation every now and then to make sure there is no delay in clearing of goods. But this is something that we are working on, and we are trying to make sure it's done properly.
Okay, thank you very much, DG. Talking about consequences, one of the consequences of building collapse is that lives are lost, properties are also lost, and people rarely get compensation. So my next question will be for Dr. Bola Onigbogi. Madam, the insurance industry, I'm sure just as compensation has improved in the last few years, but the question is, how do we support small-time players in the building and construction industry with insurance policy? How can we do that?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. We can hear you very well. Please go ahead.
Oh, good. Indulge me to stand on already established protocols. Number one, permit me to appreciate the board and management of Lafarge Africa PLC for this wonderful initiative of bringing the bugging issue of collapse building into the front burner of public discourse. And I'd like to note that this initiative finds a convergence in the thoughts of our council towards underscoring the need for greater embrace of compulsory building insurance as stipulated in the Insurance Act, as well as the increasing need for emphasis on the pivotal place of insurance, and notably the use of insurance brokers in insurance placement for maximum value by clients, be they private or corporate. I totally agree with the fact that majority of builders responsible for building collapse are small-time players. And I must note that the situation is simply exposing the lacks by the regulatory institutions responsible for building in Nigeria. And it must be stressed also that the fact that a player is small does not justify negligence if the laws are stringent. And before a building collapses, many things must have gone wrong. There must have been obvious human and material failures. On material failures, we may want to ask ourselves, what is the quality of the materials used, the cement, the iron, the sand, and so on. On the human side, what is the remit of expertise possessed by the contractor or the builder? Are they appropriately certified? Of course, these builders cannot give what they do not have. The ideal standard in building is to have a professional as leader of the team, supported by qualified and seasoned artisans. And another question is, what is the quality of the artisans deployed? And I'm so happy to learn that Lafarge is even training artisans in building. And it is now regretful that we go to neighboring countries such as Togo, Benin Republic in search of masons and other artisans. This reveals a failure in our vocational and technical education, which Lafarge is now going into fully. And I'm so happy about that. Now, concerning insurance and how do we come in? There is compulsory insurance of building under erection and public buildings. But the major problem now is implementation of that compulsory insurance. And NICOM is really working around the clock concerning that implementation. And as we all know, insurance is simply a risk mitigation device that reduces the liability of the insured when a loss occurs. It may not prevent building collapse per se, but it will reduce the liability at the aftermath of such collapse. And as it is, we have policies like erectional risk. We have contractors all risk, CAR, and fire policies that builders to take advantage of. And the point must be made that many builders are not even aware of these policies or how to take advantage of them because they did not avail themselves the services of registered insurance brokers whose duties are to explain the nitty-gritty of insurance benefit to claims, be they corporate or individual. Thank you.
Yeah, madam, so sorry, before I actually do a follow-up question, because we're not seeing your face. I think you were using two devices.
Yes.
Yeah. Where you spoke
Can you see me now?
Yes, we can see your face now. Okay. It's slightly shaking. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So, thank you.
But you heard me.
Yeah, we did. We heard you very well. We heard you very well.
Okay.
Okay, now we have spoken to the government, we've spoken to regulators, and we've heard from the insurance people. It's very important that we go back to the industry itself. That's the cement industry. And there's no better person to speak for the cement industry than the president of the Cement Manufacturers Association. So I have Engineer Joseph Makoju, and he's going to be taking my next question. Sir, I mean, you are well known in the industry. I mean, it's not just the experience, and even on the other side, what more can the industry do in the respect of eliminating building collapse in Nigeria? When I say one more, meaning in terms of collaboration, I mean, because of course there is competition in terms of the business, but coming together as an industry, all the cement manufacturers, what more can they do in terms of collaboration, consolidation, and maybe combined initiatives in order to ensure that we don't have lives and property lost again to this menace in Nigeria?
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Let me also quickly observe the protocol. But special appreciation for our special guest, the Honourable Minister, whom we've been listening to, and certainly is a builder himself, who benefited a lot from his contributions. And one has the comfort that the takeaways from a session like this, with him as a special guest, I can expect the follow-up will be reflected, in the appropriate government policies and actions that can derive from today's meeting. So very happy to have him. And then I must also thank Lafarge for making this session possible, particularly for us in the cement industry. The issue of building collapse is a very top priority issue. Lafarge is taking the lead with this series of what they call concrete ideas. I think it's a very laudable contribution to the nation. It's a forum for discussing very topical issues like this, not only concerning cement, but generally on sustainability. I'm not surprised. Lafarge globally is known for sustainability, and Lafarge Nigeria is part of that family, is setting the pace, particularly under the leadership of my good friend, the chairman, the current chairman, who also in his own businesses has set the pace. So I think I'm very happy to have the opportunity to participate. As we are one of the biggest players in the topic on the table, building collapse, because our product is one of the major inputs into buildings. I don't need to start going into all the details of the cause. It has already been touched on by many, and many of speakers will also be sharing their experience with us on the causes. But from the point of view of the manufacturers, where we come from is from the issue about how we do everything. We do not just want to produce a product and our business ends with when we collect the money for it, when we sell it. We want to see further than that. we follow even after making the sale. And that's where the whole issue of sustainability. We want to stay in business for the long run. So we have to give consent to what happens to the product after we sold it. We have to follow it through with the end user. We have to follow it through on the impact it has on the society. So an issue like building collapse, which involves lives. And by the way, in our industry, we put a great focus on health and safety. And one key area is fatalities. We have what we call zero tolerance on fatalities. You can't really put a value on human life. And I think this is one of the key issues about one of the, why building collapse is a very, very major issue, that people do lose their lives. And it's not just the resources or the money lost in the investment, but it's the fact that lives are lost. We have, we collaborate in terms of ensuring that the product we put out into the market in terms of quality, it meets all the standards, world class. Very proud to report here that Nigerian cement internationally is reputed for its quality. As we have particularly, we are endowed with very high quality raw materials for the making of cement. And all the players in the industry invest heavily in all the processes that monitors production throughout the entire chain, from raw material winning to the final the product cement into the market. And we do have what we call technical sales marketing, not just marketing, but the technical team that do go up, into the market to train the users, because a lot of the issues about collapse, the majority of collapses are due to abuse. I don't need to say cutting corners and not, wrong practices. All the issues have been already raised by some speakers, and I'm sure you're going to hear more. So we try to follow the product to the end by putting together very powerful, what we call technical sales marketing. As a group, we also combine our efforts sometimes. For instance, there is what we call the Cement Technology Institute of Nigeria, which is a body which was established by the Ministry of Industries, to which all cement manufacturers are members. There's a continuous training program for artisans. The last batch of about 3,500 artisans produced by the CTIN. And then about 2 years ago, the CTIN invested in one of the most, if not possibly the most modern cement material testing laboratory for some. I'm sure the DG Song will confirm this. This was sponsored and funded by the CTIN out of just this concern of trying to bring down the incidence of a building collapse. Where we will really want to see more attention is actually monitoring of incidences, so that we can actually log it, whether we're doing better or not. A recent statistics show that in the last decade, 2010 to 2020, building collapse increased by 77%. I think this seminar to this webinar is holding at a very good time. This is 2021. One of the outcomes from this is, if we have, after this session, have a way to put a monitoring system where we can begin to monitor the impact of all the improvements that will be proposed. Let's start measuring, have a way to measure it. Are we doing well? Are we doing better? So that this decade, we'll see the incidence come down. Really, it's on that positive note at this point in time, I would like to end my contribution, and I'm sure we'll still have opportunity again to contribute.
Yeah,
Thank you
Engineer Makoju, okay. Engineer Makoju, thank you so much for the comments. One thing that is becoming common, I mean, from every speaker here, is the issue of consequences. I think we've looked at it from the insurance aspect. Now we are going to go back to the professional aspect. We have Engineer Dominic Akubo, who is the head of Koren in Abuja, representing Engineer Aliu Rabi. I mean, if we have engineers that are professionals and they adhere strictly to the standards and the procedures in the industry, I believe we will have a very infrequent building collapse. But what we also know is that people infiltrate and call themselves engineers that are actually not engineers. So how do we solve the problem of identifying who are the real engineers and those that are not? And how can Koren help us?
Thank you very much, sir, for that question. Mr. President is pleased to have been invited to this very important event on concrete ideas And he actually commends Lafarge for this initiative, especially at a time like this, when the price of cement is increasing on a daily basis, and the chances of cutting corners is very high. If I understand your question correctly, you're talking about the issue of quackery in the building industry. Quackery has been identified as one of the leading causes of building collapse. When we talk about quackery, we also need to talk about professional quackery. You can be an engineer, trained to be an engineer. When you practice in a field where you lack adequate knowledge and experience or expertise, then you are a professional quack. Because you're supposed to know that when you don't have adequate knowledge and experience in a particular area, you're supposed to synergize with professionals who have adequate understanding of that aspect of the job in order to execute that job with regards to safety of the structure. The current Amendment Act number 3 of 2018 has actually given Koren far-reaching powers, particularly Section 21, Roman numeral 1, has empowered Koren to assess any construction site and inspect it for compliance in terms of material, in terms of specification, and even in terms of the quality of the personnel. Koren also has understanding with the Nigerian Society of Engineers on capacity development. We also have an understanding with the Independent Corrupt Practices Commission. In times past, when the current act was not amended, the issue we had was in prosecuting people who have committed infractions and are not registered engineers. But the new act as amended has now empowered Koren not only to prosecute engineers, but also to prosecute anyone who is found practicing the profession of engineering to serve as a deterrent. Most of the speakers that have spoken so far have actually mentioned lack of examples like prosecution of those who are found wanting. So when people who are found wanting in these cases, more especially has to do with loss of properties and lives, are prosecuted, and they are published on the newspaper and on various medias for people to see, it will definitely serve as a deterrent. So on the part of Koren, we are in partnership with the Nigerian Society of Engineers. We also organize capacity development programs on specific needs from time to time. We do not only regulate the practice of registered engineers, but also of technologists, technicians, and craftsmen at the same time. I do not know if this has sufficiently addressed the question that you have asked, but I'll be glad to get more follow-on questions, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so very much. I mean, obviously, what is important here, and I heard you very well, is that there are some engineers that are probably not supposed to be structural engineers, but they end up going to do structural engineer work. So what actually happens when Koren finds out these instances? What are the things that you are planning to do, that you already do, in order to minimize this professional misconduct?
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like us to understand that curbing the menace of building collapse requires a collaborative effort of all professionals, not only engineers. Engineers, architects, builders, and key players in the building industry. Engineering has several branches, and particularly civil engineering has several branches. Under civil, you have water, you have structures, you have environment, and you have so many others. So we need to understand this. There is no single rule that fits all. So what we're saying is that you can be a civil engineer, but specialized in water. You can be a civil engineer, specialized in structures. You can be a civil engineer, specialized in the environment. But when you are involved in works that have to do with the other branches, where you lack adequate experience, there is nothing wrong in you synergizing with engineers who have adequate experience in that field. By doing so, I believe you are building capacity as well.
Thank you so very much. So let me quickly move to Dr. Kende Osefala. There are so many challenges that I believe that NISTROT face in trying to reduce the menace of building collapse. What are these challenges, and how best do we overcome them?
Thank you very much, Lafarge, for inviting me to this discourse. I will
Sorry, can I just stop you there? Can we ask everyone else, anyone who is not speaking, to please mute their mic, please, so that we don't have interruptions? Thank you so very much. Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I have thanked Lafarge for organizing this beautiful discourse. And I want to stay with the existing protocols so as not to, my other discussions have really gone through the protocols. Now, let me go straight to the challenges. I'm happy with what the president of Koren, ably represented, said, and that means we're in the right direction. But I want to say that this challenge, number one challenge, I will quickly go through them, maybe about 8 challenges, which I want to quickly mention. One is the recognition and empowerment by the regulatory body, Koren, of the Nigerian Institution of Structural Engineers. As Koren representatives said, yes, we have engineers, various fields of engineering, and we have engineers in various fields. But the responsibility of Koren is to regulate the practice. Koren should be able to define who is a structural engineer, who is a water engineer. Yes, we have civil. Civil is an umbrella, so to say. We have mechanical, we have other, but not all engineers are civil engineers. Not all civil engineers are structural engineers. I think we have to register this. So, NI structure will want Koren, the regulatory body, to go a bit further by empowering and recognizing the structural aspect, because that is the major, that is the problem we have at hand right now. We have many people that are practicing just because they have current seal, so they are at liberty to practice in any field. So we need to define those who will help Koren to regulate, to monitor, to do the needful as far as structural engineering is concerned, if we are really serious about reducing collapse of building. Number 2, inadequate knowledge of the public of who is a structural engineer and what they do. To the majority of the public, everybody who can do anything technical is an engineer. Again, we need to educate people to know who is a structural engineer and, of course, where and how you can get in touch with them. Inadequate manpower and capacity at the structural approval offices in the states and local governments. Inadequate manpower. And of course, when I come to other, to profiling solutions, I will tell you what we can do to solve that. Inadequate quality assurance and control of construction works. That is monitoring and supervision. Whether we like it or not, this is a key aspect. Quality control and, of course, quality assurance is important in construction work. Quackery, which my president has talked about. Yes, engineers that do not practice in their area of competence, core competence, are professional quacks. And of course, we have non-engineers too that practice engineering design, such as draftsmen, because they have done something similar, they will just copy and, and we have a lot of them like that. No. Developers are a problem who want to cut corners by all means, because prices of materials are up. They want to make profit by all means, so therefore they don't give a damn. And they're ready to corrupt anybody. Corruption is another problem. Of course, another problem that I see facing the NIST is lack of interest in continuous professional development because of the economic situation of the country. We need to continue to train and retrain our engineers, both in the public and private sectors. We need to continue to train and retrain our artisans and other professionals in the built environment. So those are the major challenges that I think we need to address if indeed we want to reduce building or structural collapses that we are currently witnessing in the country. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, sir. And finally, I finally got to Michael. Michael, you work on this on a daily basis. I mean, as part of your work, looking at sustainable construction strategies. I think I'll be interested in two things, and I believe my audience will also be interested in two things. You have listened to everyone from the regulation side, the government side, engineering profession side, and even from the cement manufacturer side. And of course, you work internationally. What are the things how can we design sustainable construction strategies in order to eliminate this? I mean, maybe there's something international that you think we can learn from in your homework. Would you please like to share that with us? Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Dr. Okiti and Mr. Honorable Minister, distinguished thought leaders. It's really a pleasure being here. Thanks for inviting me. My role within LafargeHolcim on sustainable construction is dealing much around the key question of how to build more with less. So what makes up, so what are we building, and and how are we going to build this to generate the biggest value, the biggest purpose with the least amount of resource consumption. And I think the rationale of this definition of sustainable construction is responsibility. Taking responsibility for the way we are doing business, but the way also we are collaborating with others, or we are business or taking the responsibility of a network, of an ecosystem in which we are just one part out of many. And I think this is something you can perfectly, or I heard this from the distinguished speakers before. This is something you can perfectly transfer as a rationale, which is also something which makes up for preventing building collapse, preventing other kinds of disasters, this taking responsibility. So the distinguished speakers have very often elaborated on the quality of the different elements of quality. And I think taking the responsibility for assuring quality, or for achieving quality, and it's something which has to be driven out of each of us personally, it's not the responsibility just for our own turf, it's going beyond. And so taking responsibility for quality processes, it has been mentioned, the engineering has to be of a high quality, the design, also the use, the use and the maintenance and the supervision of buildings. If you look beyond, if you think beyond and consider the different aspects that can happen and take the responsibility for them, a lot can happen, or a lot can be prevented. Same for structures. So the materials, we are taking the responsibility for our materials. We are also taking the responsibility for the application of our materials. So we have, has been mentioned, we have trained over 5,000 artisans, and we have not only trained them on what are our materials about, we have also trained them on how to apply our materials. We train them also on health and safety aspects around the materials, but also about health and safety in general of work. So we are taking the responsibility beyond our own operations to ensure a quality mindset or in the way everyone is doing business. So at the end of the day, it's taking the responsibility for a quality mindset. Have common sense, be reasonable, maybe also be sometimes a bit conservative in what you are doing. Building construction buildings is a no frills or no business where you must not take any risks. Lives are at risk. It's something where it's not good for experiments. So maybe be sometimes a bit conservative in what we are doing. And then finally, I very much like the poster in your background, Dr. Okiti. Good journalism, people pay for good journalism. Quality comes at a cost, but it pays off. It pays off at the end of the day. And same with sustainable construction and taking this responsibility. It sometimes comes at an initial cost. It always pays off.
Thank you so very much. Yes, failure comes at a cost, and we must take responsibility. I mean, when we begin to look at the summary of this conversation, we realize that even though we are all talking from different aspects of the industry, we are all saying the same thing. And I mean, I've asked my first round of questions, and I'm going to be going around with another round of questions, but I'm going to be bringing in some of the questions that are coming in through from our audience when I think is necessary. And Honorable Minister, I'm going to come to you again, sir. So you were Commissioner for Works and in Ogun State for 8 years, and it is on record that you made tremendous progress. So I want to ask two questions. One is that the example that you gave us in relation to Lagos State, one is how do we scale it up, maybe nationally, or if it's something that can work nationally. And the second question I would like to ask is that how can the private sector work with you? What is your own requirement to them? I mean, you are not just the only one responsible, even though you take the leadership role. But what would be your own requirement from the private sector? Say, look, private sector, I want you to do this so that we can eliminate these totally. And third question is all these agencies responsible for different aspects, how do we integrate their roles to ensure that there's no lacuna or gap for people to, I mean, to engage in professional misconduct that lead to all these building collapses? I hope I've not asked you too many questions. Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you so much. The first thing, doing what Lagos has done is like planting a seed and then, of course, germinates and, of course, give returns. The initial thing is a lot of funding. You are employing people who you're going to pay salaries to and all that. But then, when that is done, it ensures compliance. Compliance leads to more revenue. So it worked very well for Lagos State. And I think if other state governments will borrow from that, especially where there's this pressure of building, it's peculiar to some urban centers, it will be actually beneficial. You need to actually go out and pay for that so that you can have adequate monitoring. That is very important. Secondly, and this of course relates to the first one, where the private sector can help with the public sector is through volunteering. Okay. Government could reach out to these professional bodies. And you see, you have a lot of professionals in there who could volunteer time to help the state in these aspects of monitoring. For instance, there are major milestones in construction and which mostly it's in the casting of the slabs, which leads to failure in most cases. So you could have professionals from these bodies in a volunteer role. You don't have to pay for that. And maybe there are some benefits in terms of protocol, so that the professionals go on site and monitor when they're about to cast, ensuring you could give 2 or 3 hours on such days, ensuring that the arrangements of the enforcement is okay, monitoring the mix for the concrete. I said kudos to Lafarge because they started this pre-mix, which of course eliminates on site if you can afford them. Of course, they bring the pre-mix for you and they just pour straight. Once your enforcement is okay, they'll bring the right mix for you and you do it. So you could have collaboration in that, where professionals volunteer from their professional bodies and help government where they're overwhelmed. Lastly, when it comes to consequences, I think people should pay when they are responsible. And this should be made public so that people who are responsible for failures, who have not done what they should do, they should be made to pay for it. If a professional is involved, it should be made to pay for it. It may not be a total ban, but it could be a suspension for a number of a period of time, so that it will learn his or her lesson, and before coming back to allow to practice in such a that. So if there are consequences, people will be more careful, and they will, of course, stop taking corners. And I must add this. Somebody mentioned it, and I think Lafarge should be part of this. We need to bring down the price of cement in the country. Lafarge, you should spearhead this. It's becoming like a cartel, that we have a few people that are producing cement, and instead of the price coming down, sincerely, because my industry is very tied to cement. About 90 to 95% of the product for cement comes from mining. And we say, look, this is sourced locally. So what is driving the price up so much? As the dollar moves, cement moves. Cement is mostly locally sourced. Please, Lafarge, I want to appeal through this medium. Let's bring down the price of cement. This will also reduce the incidence of quackery and, of course, building collapse. But when it's too expensive, where you should use 6 bags of cement in your 124, you are going to use 4 bags. The concrete is weak and, of course, can give way sometime down the line. Thank you.
Honourable Minister, I vote for reduction in the price of cement, maybe so I can own a home. So thank you for that. I mean, I'm glad about the trajectory of these questions, because I'm going to move to Engineer Makoju. The Honourable Minister has spoken. I mean, how the private sector can collaborate, work with the government in order to reduce this. I would like you to please provide a response. The reason I will have, even though, I mean, cement manufacturers alone cannot speak for the whole entire construction industry. But as the minister said, is a very critical part of the industry, but more especially compared to other producers, the cement manufacturers are actually well known. So if you take on initiatives, I believe they will have greater impact compared to maybe other small players that are in the construction industry. So Engineer Makoju, would you please like to respond to that? How you can work with the government to respond to building collapse and address. Please go ahead.
Moderator, are you specific on the issue of price of cement?
No. Generally, I mean, I can't be asking you about price of cement here. I mean, that would be too sensitive. I'm talking generally. I mean, in terms of building collapse, how can the private sector, all the private sector in terms of building and construction industry, even though you are narrow in terms of cement, how do you respond? How can you collaborate with the government in order to reduce building collapse in Nigeria?
Okay, thank you very much. In terms of collaboration with government and all the other stakeholders, the manufacturers definitely are well positioned to play a leading role in that. Because at the end of the day, we follow our product through to its final application. So we're able to be in contact with the end user who actually uses the cement. We're also in contact with people who specify, products, and then we're also in contact with the regulatory agencies. Even take the Ministry of Industry, for instance, they have an inspectorate unit that visits our plants periodically to monitor all our processes that ensure that we give the highest quality product into the market. I think where we can work with government is certainly in the area of, during my presentation, I did talk about what the CTIN is doing in training. And during the presentation by the MD of Lafarge, he also, part of his presentation was on what they're doing with training. Why we have a very well positioned to play a part in training is that we know the product, we know how it should be used. So artisans or any form of users that can receive training in which we are involved are likely to be given taught the best practice. So we believe we can play a bigger part here. But then a lot of the training institutions like the ITF and some of these other vocational institutions are owned by government. So something we have to do is partner with government and see how we can expand the network for training. And if more people who are using are well trained and knowledgeable in terms of not only the quality of cement, but how to apply it, the incidence of building collapse will reduce. Another area where we are taking some initiative recently is that we have started also trying to raise the level of the knowledge in the use of building materials by introducing courses in higher institutions. CMAN has successfully collaborated with some polytechnics. I think Ilaro is one of the first success stories to introduce higher level programs that will qualify people at the technical level who will go out and supervise. At this level, they will then get more people doing monitoring. Somebody earlier had talked about increasing monitoring, because if you don't really have the process to go around inspecting sites to preempt the abuses that lead to building collapse, we will not crack the problem. So from the industry side, we're taking a lead here, but again, we've had to work with government and educational institutions in beginning to expand the pool of qualified people that can supervise and help with this monitoring. In terms of also the standards that I earlier mentioned, our investment in a world-class material testing lab donated to some. That's just a scratch on the surface. We need more of these located, regionally, so that it can be closer, to people. You don't have to go to Lagos to get your products tested. We also do some collaboration with big construction companies who have the capacity to team with us as part of their CSR to also expand better practice to end users. I think you're quite right that as manufacturers we have a big part to play to this, but I want to assure you we are responsible. We feel responsible. Even this series going on now is by a manufacturer, Lafarge, and we need to have more engagements like this, other manufacturers to follow the example of Lafarge and spread the network for improving the awareness, the knowledge, and the practice and the regulation in this sector that will all together contribute to reducing the incidence of building collapse.
Okay, thank you so very much, sir. And I believe further conversation can go offline, and the government and the private sector can continue to collaborate. Talking about government, and this time talking about regulation. Malam Farouk, I have 2 questions for you. One from myself and one from the audience. As I said earlier, and I think you alluded to it, it is a fact that you have grown in reputation. Your agency has grown in reputation in the last few years. There's no doubt about that. I think that is well-known knowledge. But the understanding is that you would have recorded more successes in some industry compared to other industries. So regarding building collapse, are there things that you have done in other industries that you think will be helpful here in this industry? That's number 1. Then the second question from the audience is, what is the standard organization doing about the manufacturers of precast element? Say sound crate blocks whose products are substandard. That's a question specifically for you. If you'd like to take those 2 questions, sir. Malam Farouk.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you very well.
Okay, yeah. The building qualities, we have the certification that we are doing with our products, and the inspection, the factory inspections, and the regular market survey that we are always increasing. And all these things put together, we are just escalating them now to all the markets around the country. And we do have some successes, which I'm glad about. But we do have some room for improvement. And basically, the ManCap certification, which is for the products manufactured in Nigeria, and the SunCap is for the products imported into the country. And all those processes are, implemented within our, limits. Like I said, we are physically limited from our abilities. We cannot market all the, we cannot police all the marketers in the country, because essentially we have security issues. In some situations, we can't even go to certain markets without getting police support. And even when we do have police support, it was very hard for us to get in. So one of the things we're doing lately is to solicit the associations. Most of these builders and importers have associations, and we're reaching out to those organizations, doing some sensitization programs for them to understand the consequences of the actions. Of one individual can cause the death of 100 people for a little profit. So we are trying as much as we can to do that. We have some more radio programs and TV programs in the pipeline, so that we can sensitize the public as to what to look for when they're looking for quality in products, including building materials. So the other thing, the concrete, the sun concrete blocks, we are currently, we just ordered a bunch of testing machines for that, and we're going to distribute it to the country. There are some places where we do have them, but some of the machines in some areas are just obsolete or they are broken. But we've done a decent job of now trying to procure as much as we can and distribute it, because the advantage to us is every part of the country, people have blocks made. So we need to have those blocks tested. And that's a good source of revenue, and that's a good source of enforcement. The Standard Organization of Nigeria has 42 offices right now in the country. And the short answer to that question is we're buying more testing machines to do the process efficiently. Thank you.
Much. Thank you, sir. Now we want to talk about insurance. And my question is just the way I've been thinking about it. Madam, and I'm going to ask you like this. If we require every builder to have building insurance even before they start building, and then expect the insurance industry to ensure that the right personnel are those in charge of that building, would that be a solution? You're muted, man.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now, madam. Yes.
And you can see me?
Yes, we can see you. Though we are hearing you from somewhere and we are seeing you from somewhere else.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Yes, on insurance, I believe it could be a solution because insurance, I would rather say insurance is the only business that exists for other businesses to thrive. And insurance is simply a risk mitigation device that reduces the liability of the insured when a loss occurs. And we have the National Insurance Act of 2003. Under the Act, the compulsory builder's liability insurance is compulsory.
So if it's compulsory, are we saying that all builders currently have insurance?
That is the problem we have in our nation today. Implementation is the problem we are facing. They don't have it. Some are not even aware of it. And that is why NICOM is creating that awareness. And we are happy with this discussion that is, going on today. Because if the builders or the contractors, if they are aware of these policies and they know that they are compulsory, I believe things will be better. Like we have the builder's liability insurance, which provides compensation to workmen or third party on site who may suffer loss, bodily injuries, or damage to third party property. It is compulsory. And against the backdrop of Nigerians dying helplessly from the collapse of buildings, as we are all aware, through the negligence of contractors or construction professionals without adequate compensation to the victims, I think we need to really, really take this serious. And we even have occupiers' liability insurance, which ensures that compensations are paid to any member of the public or third party who may suffer any loss, death, or injury caused by the hazard insured against. And this compulsory builder's liability is simply compulsory. We need to make sure that the implementation is in place. It is simply compulsory.
Okay, thank you so very much, madam. And I'm going to ask Engineer Dominic Akubo, and similar question to Dr. Kende Osifala. Your bodies are responsible for some kind of professional development, training, accreditation, and things like that. Now, going by what Dr. Onigbogi said, is this something that your own bodies would like to push? Meaning that before you take on this responsibility of engaging in building, you will say, builder, we would like to see your building insurance. Maybe that's one. That's one aspect. The second is then that how do we ensure that the professionals remain professionals, either because they keep themselves abreast of new developments in the industry, or because they have the right professionals working in the right place. Because after Dr. Osifala spoke, after you spoke, Dr. Osifala spoke, and invariably, there are some of the challenges that they have also has to do with current. So would you please respond to that, sir? Dr. Dominic Akubo first, then I'll come to Dr. Osifala. The same question.
Okay, I am not sure I properly understand the question. Can you please reframe it?
Okay, what I'm saying is this. Not all drivers have insurance, but one of the things that insurance companies that insure drivers will require is their driver's insurance to be sure that they know how to drive. I am asking, as engineers that work on buildings, will you be requiring builders to show you their own insurance, building insurance, before you work on them? Would that be a kind of solution in this matter?
Okay, thank you very much. I listened very well to
protect your own members. That's just what I'm trying to say.
Okay. Can you hear me now, sir?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, thank you very much. I listened to her explanation, and insurance is meant to mitigate risk, including the risk of building collapse.
Absolutely.
And what the law says is very clear from what she has read. We have good laws, but the problem we have is in the implementation of those laws. I think the implementation of that law will be a plus. And it will also help in cushioning the effects of the losses occasioned by building collapse. So having said that, as a regulator, and having seen the provisions in the law she has read, I think it's a good idea for us to push in terms of advocacy, in terms of sensitization, both in the formal and the informal sector, and in partnership with professional bodies, such as the Nigerian Society of Engineers and all its divisions.
Thank you very much. Dr. Osifala, please. The same question?
Yeah, well, it's simple. I think the insurance people can help in regulating, those who practice. For example, if the insurer refuses to insure, just simply because the person who designed is not a structural engineer, of course, that settles that. That means they need to go and get a structural engineer to design the building. So I'm total support of that. In fact, that is one of the support that we are expecting from the corporate body, insurance body, so that, we work hand in hand to really get things moving. It's a way of checking quackery, because insurance will not agree. They will ask you to show your current, they will ask you to show your NI structure, seal or whatever, and that is it. Let me just rest on that. I think that has answered the question.
Thank you so very much. Also, straightforward. So, Michael, please, given your own experience designing these strategies, whether it's in relation to sustainable cities and, of course, minimizing building collapse, improving industry standards, what would be your comment today? What would you like us to take away? In terms of whether your ideas on quality, design, materials, quality measures, standards, what would be your comment to us this afternoon here in Lagos? How do we take this forward from your home point of view?
Thank you, Dr. Okiti. And I must really say it was enlightening and interesting following the discussion and following the different inputs from the distinguished speakers. I think we had the key elements on quality design, quality materials, quality construction. We had it all together, also implementation and taking insurance on this. I would like to take one step back and just ask a rather philosophical question: what makes up for the wealth of a society, or what makes a society wealthy? And I would have the hypothesis that there are two key elements. One is the built environment, infrastructure. Infrastructure is key for business, for people's living, and the other element would be knowledge, education. So we have one hardware and one software element in this. And I would like to shortly elaborate a bit on the software element, because we had the hardware well enough in this discussion. We know the key elements of what makes a quality discussion. And I would like to bring again, I had this in my former, in my previous answer, I would like again bring in the quality mindset, which to my opinion very strongly builds upon education, on awareness, on training of people. It's something that we do within the realm of our business, like Mason trainings, but also it goes beyond health and safety trainings. So if you bring this element together, we have trained four men on construction sites, 4 women on construction sites. We have trained masons and practitioners, which are not only willing, but also capable of taking this responsibility that I've mentioned before. We have a strong mindset for health and safety. What's the result of this? And that brings me back to sustainability and to the rationale of sustainability. It has a very strong social dimension. The outcome are skilled workers, which have jobs, which can make a living for themselves and their families. We have better quality of lives by avoiding collapse, but also far beyond. And then we have also a sense for the common sense for sustainable construction, which is in the first place, of course, creating safety, but then in the next step, it's also, again, what I've mentioned before, this building more with less. So what is appropriate? It's there is also, honestly, there can be too much construction, and you can over-design things, of course, as well as you can under-design them. And so if you bring those elements of training and knowledge together, you get this sense for appropriateness of construction, and that is nothing else but sustainable construction. And then we have all together, then we have a hardware which is working, which makes up for wealth, and a software which is the mindset and the education and in the spirit, by the way, also the spirit of people, which makes up for the wealth of a society.
Thank you so very much. Thank you for that. And as we come very close to the end of this conversation, and I just want to take some more questions, even though I have just about 7 minutes more. I want to take some questions that I think are very, very important, which shows that our audience are very, very engaged. I mean, this is a very, very big problem. The first question, I just want the Honourable Minister, he has hinted on this before, but it's a specific question. The question here, there are about 2 or 3 of them, saying that it appears that government agencies and regulators are working in silos. How do we improve on that? Because if they don't work together, collaborate, integrate, and obviously that would be a problem. Honourable Minister, would you like to take that question quickly, sir?
Okay, let me do that quickly. One, we need to realize that there are different roles for the different governments in Nigeria. Planning, it falls on the residual part of the constitution. That is essentially a function of the state government to regulate planning and, of course, to monitor all this development. Though I must say that there are areas of overlap where it comes to federal government estates and you have to take a planning permit from FHA or from the Minister of Works and Housing. But essentially, people recognizing their roles, it's very important. That's the first thing. Collaboration would then become easier when people understand what they need to do. So there are no conflicts on site or in the regulation. And that's where I was saying that government could collaborate with the private sector through volunteering first. Somebody wrote a question and was talking about training people so they could work for government. The problem in the first place, actually, why I suggested volunteering is because the state governments do not have the funds to employ these people to do it. That's where there's a lacuna in the first place. They are unable to monitor their space because they can't employ the people to do the job. And that's why I suggested volunteering to fill that gap. There are a lot of senior professionals who are very comfortable and will do that as part of give back to the system. And once we recognize our roles, then it becomes easier for us to come together and then work in synergy and not work at cross purposes. So the first thing is for everybody to recognize their roles and stay within that. And then coming together will be a lot easier. So we don't have overlaps. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Honourable Minister. I have a question here, and I've also touched on it before. What do we do about consequences? Because when there are no consequences, there are bound to be further misbehavior. I mean, that's just the way life. I mean, everyone that drives on, whether it's Lagos roads or any Nigerian road, can tell the reason why we have too many accidents, because there are no consequences. The driver hits someone, the driver goes away, no driver's license, no problem. So there are no consequences. So the same thing now in this industry. It's not specific. What do we do about consequences? Anyone can answer. Anyone can answer that question. What do we do? Because we don't have any someone from the Ministry of Justice here. So they are the ones supposed to be responsible for consequences, but anyone can answer, either from their own professional point of view.
Can I comment on that, sir?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to use the current example in dealing with the incidences of a building collapse. When the culprits are identified, if they are non-engineers, they will be prosecuted in a court of competent jurisdiction. And if they're engineers, they'll be made to face the engineering tribunal. And Koren has been empowered now with powers of prosecution. And they will have to sit before a panel before they are tried by the tribunal. And it may take a while, but definitely there are cases that are being tried at the moment. So I think the issue of consequences, it has legal backing now in the current act, that once you're found culpable, you'll be tried. And if you are tried, you'll be convicted. And what we should urge is that the end result of such trials are in the public domain. Because even if they are tried successfully and there are penalties, and these information are not in the public domain, it may not serve as deterrent. It may not go to the target audience. So what we should be doing and encouraging is that such end results of such occurrences are widely published in the newspaper and other media. That way it will serve its intended purpose. That's from the current perspective, sir.
Thank you so very much. We are coming to the end of this conversation. So, and I want to thank all the speakers and thought leaders here this afternoon. Let me just quickly give my own takeaway, and we will take a poll. I think a poll is ready, and we will show the result of that poll. And then I will hand over to the GCEO, that's Khaled. Once again, thank you all. So let me tell you, in terms of when there are about 3 or 4 words that have become so common in the last 1 hour of this conversation. One of them is definitely responsibility. We all have responsibility to play. I have no doubt that I'm sure journalists also have responsibility. So I will take that. Our own responsibility is to continue to ask questions. For instance, all the building collapses of the past, we can look for 1 or 2 of them and ask what has happened to those that are responsible for those collapses. So that is what I take. The minister, whether it's regulator, whether it's the cement manufacturers, etc., we have all understood this afternoon. We all have our responsibility and clearly defined roles that we have to follow. And in doing that, our expectation is that we will bring down the number of building collapses in Nigeria. And the second one is in terms of consequences. And of course, Engineer Dominic has answered that question for everyone else. But in terms of insurance, when people know that they will pay dearly for any error and misbehavior, they tend to behave. That would be the incentives. If they are required to have building insurance, and those underwriting those insurance ask questions about the people that they will use.
Working with.
I think it will be it will go a long way, to ensure that we minimize building collapses in Nigeria. And obviously, whether it's responsibility, whether it's consequences, there will still need for collaboration. We cannot make progress without collaboration. So my expectation is that this is the start of the conversation that we're having going forward in the government and the private sector, in the regulator, the builder, the cement manufacturer, that we all come together to ensure that we don't lose lives and properties anymore. On that note, I would like to ask Deremy to please provide the survey result for us to see, and then I'll be delighted to hand over to Khaled. Please, so this is a survey. I'm sure everyone would have seen it on your screen. Please, has this webinar been useful to you? There are 3 answers, possible answers: yes, no, or to some extent. I believe it has been useful to me. So please vote, and I'm sure they will show us the result later. So thank you so very much. On that note, let me quickly, okay. So the poll results say yes, yes, 92%, no, 0%, to some extent, 8%. Well, I used to be a lecturer in my previous life. That means 98% pass mark. That would be what you call an A star. So this conference has been, most people have found it very, very useful. Even though I'm the moderator, I can assure you I found it very, very, I've learned a lot this afternoon. 98% have found it useful, even though, so no one has been on this call that did not find this very useful. I thank you all for your participation, and I have the honor of handing over to Khaled Dokano. Thank you so very much, sir.
Thank you so much, Go. And again, I cannot express my pleasure and gratitude enough to His Excellency the Minister and the rest of the esteemed guests for the contribution, the enthusiasm, and the learnings I personally captured out of this today's session. I've been taking notes rather than really making a comment, because there's a lot of valuable input around the session today. I would bring really my 2 key points today. The problem that we've been discussing today, it's significant, it's impelling, and it has a serious and critical impact on the society and the community in Nigeria. However, the root cause of the problem is one of the elements that really we need to bring to the table, and I believe this will be the theme of our coming webinars and sessions, which is the availability of housing. So the shortcuts, non-compliance, trying to reduce the cost of the building, is all a workarounds and cutting corners around, do we have the affordable housing in Nigeria at the right cost, which is available to everybody? And this, for us, is one of the key elements where we need really to work together around what's the strategy for the affordable housing? Can we make affordable housing? And can we help through innovation and sustainable products going forward in making houses affordable? And accordingly, we are contributing partially towards reducing people who wants to cut corner and break the rules. So affordable housing is one key element towards sustainability. and I believe it can contribute a lot towards reducing the impact of the current situation of collapsed building. A lot of talks about ready-mix and concrete, and I will share with the audience my personal experience. As Lafarge Africa PLC, we have a company that do ready-mix concrete for years and years. Our challenge is we need to provide, and we always provide, a strength, quality, and technical specs rather than volumes. But the more we do this, the more we are opposed by other ready-mix players that are not in compliant because they are part of the cycle of providing shortcuts to the building structures. So to empower reliable players in the ready-mix concrete, and not only Lafarge Africa, because I think the country needs 10 and 20 and 30 players like Lafarge Africa in the ready-mix concrete to help supporting the buildings and the sustainability. To find a room for reliable and committed players in the market, regulations in stopping other players from using wrong technology or non-reliable technology is one of the key elements. The third element is every building, according to the laws and regulations in the country, needs to have a designer and a validator. We have to make sure that there are enough regulations on the validator offices in Nigeria not to validate designs which is not according to specifications. This is a one key starting element. Even before the construction starts, designer and validators should be held accountable for the design and the specs they provide to the construction companies. My last point is value proposition. Lafarge Africa is taking these milestones and steps for years and years, outside of Nigeria and inside Nigeria. We are in very close contact with our customers, with our key account, with our construction companies, because we are not only cement providers, we are value solution providers. And I think this is, again, one of the milestones where we all need to work around. How can we provide value proposition in the construction segment to help mitigating the risk of the collapsed buildings in Nigeria? I'll leave it to here. I thank you so much. And now I leave the floor to our chairman, Mr. Adobe Adefio, to make the closing remarks on our very, very good and rich session we had today. Your Highness, thank you so much. Your Excellency, thank you so much. And I much appreciate the presence of our guests. Mr. Chairman, please.
Well, I think the job is done. Khalid has said it all. All that is left for me is to thank everybody. And what can I say? I think Fola was greeting me when we started. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. And I said, I don't know whether it's good afternoon. Well, I think it's a good afternoon. I must thank everybody that is here. I'm not going to start from the Honourable Minister. I'm going to start from Dr. Mrs. Bola Onigbogi, and to thank you for your valued time and contribution and the battle you battled with technology to make sure that you are here. I like your approach. Next time, I think I will use it. I'll try and connect from 3 points. So head or tail, I'm going to win. To the esteemed and honorable Minister of the Federal Republic, many people really did not know when Fola was shooting, she used 1 bullet to kill 3 people. She called an honorable minister, she called an architect. Little did she know that you have a master's degree in construction management. I don't think she also know that you passed through Ogun State for 8 years and the place will never be the same again. Never, ever. Anybody who has visited Abeokuta in 1970, in 1980, in 1990, and year 2000, who go back there and who can recognize the place, or who is still lucid enough to see what they have done there, we know this man not only has vision, they have energy, they can translate it. And I'm sure Dr. Kehinde Osifala, that I'm meeting for the very first time, that I've heard how I know I know who you are really. You are really an engineer's engineer, zero tolerance. So I know you will agree with me that the courage that they took into the rocky and hilly Abeokuta and put straight line roads there. You know, if many people do not know that the whole of Western Nigeria, the Yoruba land, is designed on radial town planning. Not the grids that you have in New York and other places. So in all the Yoruba towns, the center is the palace. On the east of that center is on the east of the center is the palace. Then you have the mosque right in front of it. Then you have the market next to it. And then they do all the radial circles and they create a town out of it. You know, which is completely difficult when it becomes completely urbanized. So this guy went there and I think he did a yeoman's job. Unfortunately, I've met him a long time before then. And I thank him for honoring us with his time. Engineer Joe Makoju, I cannot say much that he is Mr. Cement in Nigeria. He is an Heritage WAPCO engineer and Heritage WAPCO managing director. And even though we are happy to release him onto other bigger functions, we are happy that he still remains our father. He's always happy to come back home. Who have I left? Engineer Dominic Akubo. I think you've represented your Oga very much. Can you please help pass our great felicitations to him and to say to him that we cannot say we didn't miss him, but I think you did a good job. Thank you so very much for your lucid contribution. Dr. Okiti, we have a lot to talk about outside of here because I'm just going to stop at that. I think you did a fantastic job. And to Fola, it's a good afternoon. So I can answer you now. I think some people heard when I say I don't know whether it's good or bad, but it's a good afternoon. To all the other members of the audience who have really spent time listening to us, I will be happy to welcome you to the third series because this conversation really, why not for time and for the fact that the human body really does not function beyond 1.5 hours, 2 hours. This is a conversation that is supposed to go on and on. Monsieur Sharf, thank you for your time and thank you for your contribution. We will be happy to welcome you again to help us in explaining really the depth of Lafarge's interest in quality construction and in building solutions. So I think we've all had a very good afternoon. All I can say is thank you all and bring this to an end until we resume for the third one. Thank you so very much.
Bye. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you very much.